Hey everybody, this is Brad from Raw Dogs. This is part 2 of our discussion on Bloodborne, and this was previously a Patreon exclusive. This has been available to them for probably a couple years now. It's available to y'all today. If you want access to a huge backlog of exclusive episodes, you can check out patreon.com/hairofthedogcast. We're part of the HyperX Podcast Network. Make sure to check out those other shows as well. So, enjoy our discussion on Bloodborne. I have the hunter's dream every night. Like, I wake up afresh every day, and eventually I just get drunk on blood, pass out, and I just do the exact same thing, go through the exact same motions again.
And blood to you is literally just one of Eagle Park's
it's slushy beers.
Fantastic IPAs. I was going to say.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Raw Dogs.
We're here.
We're back. You know, I just realized last episode we didn't even introduce ourselves. I'm Brad.
Actually, I'm Brad. You're Dylan, if you remember.
That's how I closed it out last time. Yes. I'm Big Tex, and that's old Papa B-Red over there. Before we hit the record button, Dylan, you had mentioned you just watched the first episode of something that's kind of tangentially related to what we're talking about today.
Lovecraft Country, which is a book, apparently. I had no clue.
Oh, really? I didn't know. I thought it was an original show.
No, it's not. It's apparently the book is really great. Towards the end of the episode, it gets really intense.
The trailer is so fascinating because it looks on the surface level like it's just going to be about a lot of race issues. And I love how they have the Lovecraft stuff not explicitly stated, but they're like, there's something deeper going on here. And then
they don't show you any of it in the trailer, but it
happens.
It happens in the first episode in the coolest way.
Dude. Well, we're talking about Bloodborne. This is a Patreon exclusive episode, and we appreciate you. You sought the good blood. You received the good administration. The rest of you are suffering from the scourge of the non-Patreon.
No, they had enough insight, so they gained more eyes to see.
And right now, you're all feeling a bunch of frenzy if you didn't have that insight, because it's getting this knowledge is getting forced on you. Mm-hmm. And that's what's going on. We're talking about Bloodborne today, but before we get into Bloodborne, let's just talk a little bit about Lovecraft.
Sure.
Because Lovecraft, it's like one of those names in fiction that kind of looms over everything.
H.P. Lovecraft is important to modern literature because of what he did for the pulp novel. Mm-hmm. And like pulp horror in general.
Didn't he become mostly popular after he passed?
Yeah.
Dude, what if after we die, Raw Dogs takes off and is the biggest podcast in the world?
Hope not. I fucking hope not.
I just want to hear 10 people like it while we're alive.
If you're listening to this in the future, what are my grandkids like?
Dude, if our grandkids might be listening to this.
Hey, Sonny, do cars fly?
And if I'm still alive, give your granddad a beer. My experience with Lovecraft was, it was kind of just one of those things I wasn't really aware of. I'm like, oh, Cthulhu, it's like a big squid guy. But through reading the Song of Ice and Fire books by George R. R. Martin, there is a much deeper lore hidden in the background.
Yep.
And a lot of like kind of delving into that, people like, it's very Lovecraftian. He talks of old ones. And that's kind of where I started. And then I haven't read any books, but I have this great vinyl with some of his short stories.
There are some really great short stories, and some of them are complete duds.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. Whenever it has to do with something like, and then he revived him from the dead, like Reanimator.
Yeah.
I'm just like, meh. It's when you get into this stuff where it's like, oh, I was traveling on a raft, and suddenly the sea became really black, and I didn't know where I was anymore.
I was walking up in the pale moonlight up this hill towards the light. I've experienced some like Lovecraftian video games before, like a detective one that was released.
The Sunken City.
Not that one. There was like something of Cthulhu or something like that.
Oh, Call of Cthulhu.
Call of Cthulhu, maybe. I don't know. The game was shit. And as far as fictional interpretations of Lovecraft, I'm not by any means an authority on this, but Bloodborne has done such a fantastic job of conveying the concepts of old gods and great ones.
One of the great things about Lovecraft is he presents his mythologies in the abstract, and it forces your mind to think a completely different way. So most of his gods are nameless, unknowable, and the scariest part about them is that they loom so large and so vast that your little dumb brain can't handle it.
And not only can it not handle it, but our existence to them is
nothing.
It's nothing. You ever watch Mad Men?
Sure, yeah.
It's when that one like intern or whatever gets on an elevator with Don Draper.
Yeah,
I've brought this up before. He's like, I feel bad for you. He's like, I don't think about you at all.
Yeah.
It's like, Erden, I feel bad. He's like, who are you?
It's why would he care?
It's like, I'm a fucking great one, you idiot. It's a cosmic horror. The more you're aware of how there are these big, powerful things, and essentially it's related to our modern world where we don't really know specifically how the Big Bang happened or what caused existence to happen. And it's being aware of these things, these powers greater than us. And the more you know, it's like, it's good to have this insight, but it can also cause some frenzy.
Have you ever like gone to a fairly secluded beach to the ocean at night and just looked out at that shit?
Terrifying.
It's fucking terrifying.
When I was living in Hawaii, I'd just take my hammock out and do that some nights.
And you're just like, wait, why? How?
It's mind-boggling. And then you just look up at the stars, and then you just realize, oh, cos is all around us. And
if you have even a little light from civilization, the stars are all drowned out. So you're just looking at this well of blackness right in front of you. It's making noise. You imagine yourself out there, and that is actually pretty much my worst nightmare.
And that's where this game goes to. Bloodborne.
They do it, yeah.
I'm still just so in love with the marketing. The fact that they didn't say it was about this stuff. They kind of touted it as like a werewolf beast game, which that's fucking fun.
I was going to buy this to begin with because of who made it and its legacy. But when this stuff started happening, I'm like, fucking thank God. I was like, if it's just like monster hunting, that's like the least interesting thing to me.
So we left off the last episode with Master Willem and Lawrence after we beat Vicar Amelia. They're discussing how they're going to fear the old blood. There's a schism between these two friends and scholars. At this point, we have unlocked a door that will take us into the Forbidden Woods, and this also triggers the nightfall and moon cycle where it's a later part in the night. So some NPCs have different things going on.
Yeah. There's some if you miss some stuff, too bad.
I hate the Forbidden Woods. In a good way. Like, I appreciate that it's supposed to be the Forbidden Woods.
You're not a snake guy?
Even on my latest playthrough, I'm like, I'm not going to fight all. I don't mind the small snakes.
That's where I farmed.
I don't mind the small snakes. The big ones and the humans that are just all infected with snakes that turn into snake heads.
Oh, those are fun, though.
They're fun.
They remind me of the Las Plagas from Resident Evil 4.
You know, I've never played Resident Evil 4.
Jesus Christ, Brad.
Talk about a blind spot. I know. That's
all right.
What I mean.
We'll have to do a stream someday.
Yeah. The Forbidden Woods is what you go through next. And the reason... we got the password to go to the Forbidden Woods. I don't know if anything was ever specifically stated, like, seek Bergenworth. We've been mentioned... Bergenworth has been mentioned to us a couple times, but...
You don't know what it is, but you assume it's some sort of place of learning. Because they keep talking... They add scholar and other stuff to the corner of it.
But we learned that the Healing Church, what we were told to go seek for seeking the Pale Blood and the Blood Ministration. We sought that out, and then we found out that the Healing Church, they stemmed off from Bergenworth. So we are going to Bergenworth through the Forbidden Woods.
It looks like the Boondocks to me.
To me, what it is it's a bunch of people that were ostracized from Yardom, and they're like, you're not allowed in here. So they made up, like, we don't need you. We're going to have our own prostitutes and alcohol over here.
I just assumed it was kind of like not a Wild West town, but pioneer village.
It's definitely ramshackle. It's definitely just tossed together.
Yeah.
They do have some traps. They're like, ooh.
That's an annoying part of the game.
Ooh, boy. This wood will fall right through if you step on it, and there's crows down there going to eat them.
I'll tell you what. Turn up the brightness on your TV at this part, because
yeah, I saw.
You'll miss something.
Dude.
And honestly, I've never had a situation where I was like, I'm so glad I actually tuned this brightness. I don't think I've ever had unless it's way too
If the brightness
bright.
is tuned properly, it just means you're going to shit your pants more.
Well,
Possibly.
With horror games, I tend to do it. I've never been scared at Bloodborne.
It's not like fear, like a horror film, but dude, it's like I'm terrified. I'm losing
What's
health.
around the corner?
Dude,
yeah.
You're so far ahead, and you're like, I just need to get to this lamp. I have
really
two
hope
more
there's
blood
something
vials.
There. You're like. In this house, they're better. Like, I'm opening a door. If there's an enemy, I'm completely fucked. But if there's a lantern, I'm saved.
And this is an instance, too, where it is reinforcing. Like, you cannot take your skills for granted. You can't just think like, I got it figured out and just kind of go and start blindly spamming attacks again because you will get punished immediately if you do that. There's kind of like the Forbidden Woods is kind of in two parts. The first part leads you up to that little ramshackle village. There's just a bunch of villagers trying to attack you. You do get to meet an interesting new NPC who I'm sure you are way more familiar with than I am. Patches.
Patches. Oh, well, Patches. You mean Patches the hyena? Patches the spider.
Is he actually another animal in other games?
He's called Patches the hyena because he's like a giggly thief.
Okay. I wasn't sure if he was, I thought maybe he was a
In Dark Souls,
hyena.
he's called Patches the hyena.
Yeah.
In Demon Souls, he's called Patches something, I don't remember, but he kills someone in the hub area if you don't kill him first. You think he's supposed to be like a merchant NPC for a while, but he kills someone.
Yeah, my understanding is he's just a shithead in every game. And he
likes to push you down things.
And no matter like what you do afterwards, you like catch up and he's like, haha, got you pretty good there, buddy. It was just a good joke. We're still friends. And
we'll talk after you play Dark Souls. You're going to be so angry at Patches that you'll want to kill him in every single one of his incarnations.
Yeah. You eventually run into Patches later. I killed him in my first playthrough, but I spared him this second time just because I wanted to see what happened.
I like him as a spider. I think he's funny.
Yeah.
It's just like, he's like a Black Widow, but it's like a face on it.
So some optional things run into us on the Forbidden Woods. Patches will give you the Tonsil Stone. He said, just go seek this chapel on the side of the Great Cathedral. Nothing bad will happen, I promise. Then you can also, after you get past this little village, if you head to the left, you can find this cave where there's a bunch of strange giants and a poison lake. And dude, it just...
I completely forgot about that part of it. Where you're trudging through.
I hate it, dude. That's so tough. And you run into those slugs that you don't think are bad, but they team up on you and you get your ass kicked very quick.
I mean, it's all about managing mobs.
Yeah.
That's most of what the combat breaks down to because the combat's not super difficult to understand.
It's not crazy complicated.
No, yeah.
I mean, it can be if you want, because I guess each weapon does have like 20 different moves. If you want to get,
if you're pushing forward on the stick, if you're pushing on the side, it kind of changes it up a little.
But that's a level I don't think most people play at. No. It's elegant, but it's also, I mean, it's straightforward enough. You know when this enemy's doing this, you parry this way, you go that way. It is fairly straightforward, but it is managing mobs, like you said. If you take any, like, even easy guy for granted, and you have, like, 5 villagers just all hit you at once, they're going to juggle you, and you're going to get your butt kicked.
An enemy with a torch, they just stick it in your face long enough, you're dead.
Yeah.
It's over. It's like, oh, cool. So everything involves it. You have to pay attention.
So you go down that cave, and all of a sudden you get to this ladder, and you go up. Yeah. The longest ladder I've ever experienced.
Have you played Metal Gear Solid 3?
Shit, you're right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid's got some wicked ladders too, but dude, and when I realized where I was and then I opened a gate back to the beginning of the game, just the interconnected nature of these different levels blows my mind still. Just to be able to build one lamp and 5 shortcuts that wind up with elevators looping back to something and guides you all the way to the top or to the boss. It's some masterful fucking level design.
Yep. This ruined a lot of games for me. Open world games mean nothing to me anymore.
The thought of going back into Skyrim and having 10 arrows pointing where I'm going and like a million things like pointed out to me
sucks.
It sounds so stupid now, and I'm excited to go back in and try and like turn off as much of that as I can and do like a virtual reality run through and see what it is, because even jumping back into Bloodstained a little bit, I was paying more attention. I'm like, all right, if this enemy is down here, what does this mean? And some games do have a lot more lore built in that I'm able to appreciate now.
Well, Bloodstained, from what I've played, I've gotten maybe 3/4 of the way through the game.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I love Symphony of the Night, and I think Symphony of the Night has some of the best level design.
Yeah.
Period.
Agreed.
I think Bloodstained has a few too many long hallways. And I think that's its downfall for me personally.
I think Final Fantasy 13 has too many long hallways.
Ew.
Bazinga.
Final Fantasy 10 does though too.
At least they're prettier hallways. The music's better too.
I don't know. 13 has some
10
bangers.
Is the best music.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
back to Yosefka's clinic.
Yeah. Yep.
You can actually get into the second level here through this like back entry, and you don't want to confront Imposter Yosefka yet.
No, you don't.
This is the first time you will run into a celestial emissary if you go this way, though.
They're like these goobery little. They waddle around. They got skinny bodies and giant heads. They're really cute. I really like the celestial emissaries.
I was terrified of them though the first time because I didn't know what it was, and I'm like, this little gooper could fuck me up, and I didn't realize that just by opening the gate before I could enter right back there. So I was terrified. I don't want to lose my blood echoes.
Yeah.
The celestial emissaries are interesting. We'll talk about them when we get a little bit further on, but
they're cute.
Anyone who you have sent to Yosefka's clinic at this point will be blue goopers. And if you kill those blue goopers, you can pick up whatever items that they would have bestowed to you later.
Which isn't really that rewarding.
No, it is an alternate method.
It's an alternate method, but you get the greatest reward in all these games. If you're patient with your quest lines, you can kind of gain a ton more later. It's like, you know how in like BioShock, how you can either like murder the little sisters right away to get an immediate gratification, or you could save 3 of them and suddenly a present shows up and gives you as much as you would have gotten anyway.
Which I wish it didn't do that. I wish you were punished for saving the little sisters. Yeah. I think that'd be a better mechanic.
It's a better moral quandary. Okay. I have a feeling that came from on high. I think that's like a 2K executive who did that.
It'll be fun when we talk about BioShock.
Yes, it will be.
Yeah, but essentially, Imposter Yosefka says, you should stay down there. Don't challenge me. It's interesting you got this far, but go away.
Ah, moonlit scents. How did you worm your way in here? Very unfortunate. I had such high hopes for you. Would you mind leaving us alone? Things need not change. You'll do the rescuing, and I'll do the saving. But if you refuse to leave, I've always wanted to try my hand on a hunter.
And at this point, I go away. You can choose to fight her. It's better for you to wait. But at this point, though, you can also grab the Canehurst summons by where you received your first blood administration. Yep. And you know what's fucking super cool about that is you check out the details, like, for some reason it's addressed to you.
Well, that's how Dracula starts.
Dude, I love the opening to Dracula, the book and the movie. Despite Keanu Reeves' accent.
Oh,
it's like, whoa. Getting invited out to this place, and you don't know if that's why you came to the town. Some people theorize that's why, like, you came to Yharnam, and maybe it is. What, did they hear you were coming? They sent you an invitation? And if it is, did Annalise send it because she's trying to have
Annalise,
she can't send anything out because Ligarius is blocking it.
The Vile Bloods are basically vampires in this universe, right?
Yeah.
They've been watching you this entire time.
But there's only one Vile Blood left, allegedly. You know, it's okay.
But even Dracula could transform into shit.
But Annalise is sealed in this room.
Yeah, but who's to say that she's sealed the way you think? She's imprisoned by Ligarius.
Since we're not going to be able to not talk about Canehurst right now,
okay, we got to talk about Canehurst.
The invitation says you go to the obelisk in Charnel Lane. It whisks you away to Forsaken Castle Canehurst. You know what's exciting about when you go to the obelisk? I noticed on my third playthrough.
What's that?
There's a camera angle of someone watching, like, through the trees of you jumping into the carriage. So someone was watching. Are you
fucking kidding?
There's someone who's watching you.
I'm going to have to watch that.
It's really good. It's like, I'm like, who did that? Who's watching right now? Well, because
so I think maybe Annalise is the last of the Vile Blood. But do you think Dracula didn't have servants out in the world?
What was his name? Renfield.
Yeah. Well, that's probably what
Tom Waits. Tom Waits in the movie.
And then he's like, oh, how good.
Could I have a cat?
Oh, yes,
Could I please have a cat?
Oh, yes, miss.
I mean, the most compelling evidence of what I've seen for what Canehurst is, because it's the Vile Bloods. If you talk to Alfred, he says, at some point, a Bergenworth scholar betrayed the college and took the forbidden blood. So it's a blood that's forbidden even for the college.
It transforms you into something abhorrent.
I've heard some compelling evidence that, like, it's blood that they got even deeper, that they're like, this isn't good stuff.
It's moldy oldie.
I think it might be the blood of Queen Yharnam, who was also impregnated before, because Ariana is also related to Canehurst. So she has
Maria too.
So they have the same.
Maria's very old.
Because if Ariana has the same blood as Annalise, it's possible if it's the same blood as Lady Yarnum. That's why there was another birth attempted by the Great Ones. I do like that. I mean, it was a forbidden blood. It was something that they didn't want to be shared.
Well, yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I would love to play through the game again. Honestly, I really wish I hadn't sold my PS4 years ago, because all I wanted to do while reading about this was just like I could just do a run through in like 15 hours. It wouldn't be that hard.
Well, you know what's great? I'm going to order Persona 5 and beat Persona 5. And then when I buy the PlayStation 5 in late November, I'm going to borrow you my PS4 so you can play the FF7 remake and Bloodborne if you want to.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, I mean, I don't need to do Bloodborne. I'll do the remake. Honestly,
we'll do a remake.
If I can get my hands on a PS5, I'm just going to buy it. It's fuck it, whatever. One of the things I really love about Canehurst, and this is something I've told people and they agreed with me. Now, imagine in the beginning of this game, you chose the notched cane.
Threaded cane,
sorry.
Yeah.
Now you show up at Canehurst Castle. It's the best 3D Castlevania you've ever played.
It really is.
Right?
It really is. It's
exactly what it is, though.
It's unlocking shortcuts. It's getting far enough to like...
Ghosts, gargoyles. Yeah.
It's like
it feels like its own contained game in a lot of ways.
It's the best version of Super Castlevania 4.
That game is so good on its own, and the way you control that whip,
dude! Because Canehurst is so interesting. There's servants that are still cleaning that won't attack you until you attack them.
Well, it introduces ghosts to the game. Aside from like the messengers, there's no hair nor hide of phantasms, really. Like no one comes to you as like a ghostly ghoul.
This is Dracula's castle. This is. There are a lot of strange...
Literally Dracula's castle.
A lot of strange forces at work going on there. You go through a dining hall, and it's just like all full of gold and like things that you shouldn't be eating. It's very bizarre and unputting. There's even like flea men from Castlevania like jumping around there.
And because when I showed up here, I'm like, oh, okay... you basically arrive, you go through this gate, there's this weird snowy area, and enemies you can barely defeat.
Dude, a carriage just shows up and like whisks you over the water. How amazing is that?
It's strange because it's not something that Bloodborne makes you feel like should happen, which is why I feel like it's almost a completely different game. And I do believe it must, I've got to say it was probably added much later because it wasn't given the connectivity.
I've heard some people say it feels like Demon Souls to an extent.
Yeah, you push through it, and then much like Dark Souls 2, where you basically fan out in every single direction, this is kind of like that. I agree. I don't think that's a wrong statement.
The castle has got a very interesting layout, too. You go through this, like, the entryway, the dining hall, and eventually you're in the library. I love when you actually go out of a window and you're, like, navigating down the ramparts, and you're getting lower. The way you navigate around the castle to get up, and you have to go out
through
onto
broken windows,
sketchy walkways.
Well, it's funny, like you know how in like Uncharted, Nathan Drake is very like the way they animate him is very particular on how you can get across things. In a lot of Souls games, it's like, I mean, if you feel like you can get over there, you might be able to get over there.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what it is because there are some parts in there where you kind of have to make like a. Is there any other way I can do this? No? Well, my character's his feet will be running off of the side of the ledge, but your character will still be on the ledge. And a lot of that, I don't know. There's something intriguing about that. It feels kind of organic in that way.
And it feels different from the rest of Bloodborne, where I don't feel like you're doing a lot of that elsewhere, where you're sketchily running around on the edges of rooftops, dropping onto other rooftops.
No.
You do a little bit of that, but nothing to this extent.
Well... Bloodborne has a certain level of vertical level design.
Yeah.
But it's not nearly as much as it's horizontal and it's like weaselly spirally design. The first Dark Souls does a lot of great vertical design. But
and apart from all of the castle, you get up to the top and you fight old Martyr Logarius.
He uses a big old wheel.
Before we talk about Logarius as a boss, let's talk about Alfred, the Executioners, and Logarius. So Logarius was a member of the Healing Church who sought to destroy the File Bloods. He has a really great quote where not all acts of good are necessarily wise. Not all like acts of evil are necessarily foolish. Something along those lines.
Which is an actual quote from something else.
He's like, but we strive to be good.
Yeah.
And they descended on this Castle Canehurst, and the executioners just like slaughtered everybody. Yep. And the wheel, the Ligarius wheel, is an interesting weapon.
This has its roots in witch hunts.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
A lot of what the torture, a lot of the weapons and stuff that these quote unquote holy men would bring to supposed witches is opportunities of extreme torture. So the weapons they had weren't lethal; they were meant to inflict pain. There's a very famous book. It's like the guide. It's called "The Hammer of the Witches." I don't know what it translates to in like German, but for the most part, it's this idea that if you can torture out a confession and then you can destroy them, that's the most satisfying way to be godly. Yeah,
they didn't realize that if you're torturing someone, they'll admit to anything.
Yeah, turns out torture doesn't really work.
And it's one of those things where it's just because the Vile Bloods were set to be opposed from the Healing Church doesn't necessarily mean they were evil, but they were definitely rivals. They had different blood, and they were it's like a nuclear blood race or something.
Right.
Can't let the Ruskies get ahead of us. Can't let those Canehurst bastards get the first man on the moon presence.
The moon presence. Very good, Brad.
Thank you. But Ligarius was the one who finally got to Annalise, but he realized that her immortality, which she's the only purely immortal character in the physical realm.
Yeah. You can mash her up to little bits, like literally little bits, and she'll still survive.
She'll be writhing around.
Yep.
So he decided he'd put the crown on and sit in front of the door and forever spend the rest of his existence as the Silent Guardian.
A Sisyphean warden. Ooh. Do you like that? Do you like how that sounds?
This is a smart podcast.
I'm getting poetic, baby.
God damn.
Yep. It's interesting that he chose to be that, which is why they call him Martyr Ligarius, because he is literally like, well, we can't ever have this ever again, so I'm just going to sit here and wait for someone to try.
Yeah. And we do.
And you do. Which is strange. If you're talking from a game design standpoint and you're thinking about character motivations, think about the player just showing up to this place, and literally for you, the person playing it, you're like, well, I just want to see what's at the end of this. Is there supposed to be, like, in the same way that it says at the beginning, seek the pale blood, and how your character keeps asking about pale blood, is there a hidden agenda to the character you're playing as that even you don't understand?
Well, let's talk about why you might be going there. Just from us as players, what we're thinking. Alfred does mention that Canehurst Castle is full of vile bloods, and they should be destroyed. So,
Sure.
And Alfred has been a homie so far. He seems like an upright, trustworthy dude.
Never trust anyone. That's my theme.
And we'll learn that. We do learn that. But apart from that, I mean, story-wise, you're told to be going to do this one thing. You're like, nah, I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to kill everything in this location. It does kind of just seem like you're maybe barking up a tree that is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's already fine over there. What are you doing?
Well, you've heard of like Ludo narrative, right? Like how Nathan Drake, I keep bringing up Uncharted. I'm not sure why, but like how Nathan Drake can kill like 20,000 people in a single run of Uncharted, or like 1,000 people. But the fact that it's like narrative based and you're in a video game means that you don't connect those two things.
Sure.
About how he's like a mass murderer.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
He's a good guy who has killed a fuck ton of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. So because this is something I like to think about, especially like a great example of one that approaches it correctly is Nier Automata.
Yeah.
Approaches Ludo narrative exactly the way you want. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, well, we got to do this. I mean, like, they're bad. We're wiping them out.
Are they bad? And then eventually, like, the robots are like, who am I? And they jump off a cliff. I'm like, I don't want to kill anyone anymore. Yeah.
Well, when you get into the headspace of a hunter in this game, is it literally the player's bloodlust?
And it's such a good like meta text for the game where if you're not thinking about it, you are just the blood hungry, thirsty, evil hunter who's just become a beast.
Well, Miyazaki tends to make these games about games it's too
fucking good. It's one of the best video games. It's in my top games of all time.
Oh, it's in my top 5, yeah. Bloodborne is the best Souls game, period.
Yeah, but you can run into Queen Annalise then, and you can make contact with her and kneel in front of her. You can become a vile blood, take her blood if you want.
I always do. I don't know why.
Dude, I want to be a vampire. You put me in front of Queen Annalise right now, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
She's cute too, so it's like,
she's got a mask on, but
you can tell.
Maybe even better.
You can tell.
But you can also get an unopened Canehurst summons, run it back to Alfred, be like, yo, dude, look what I found. He's like, holy shit, I've heard of their pompous invitations, but I am pumped.
He goes and he mashes her up with a big wheel.
Dude, he's crazy.
Wham!
You show up in the room and he is like,
Master, look, I've done it. I've done it. I smashed and pounded and grounded this rotten siren into fleshy pink pulp. There, you filthy monstrosity. What good's your immortality now? Try stirring up trouble in this sorry state, all mangled and twisted with every inside on the outside for all the world to see.
He assumes that Annalise killed Logarius too.
Yeah. And he is full, like, bloodlust crazy person.
Oh, yeah. He mashes her to little bits.
And it's great because then
you can revive her.
As the player character, you just go up, you pick up the queenly flesh, which is one of the best item names ever.
And then you just revive her, and it's just like, well, he got what he wanted a little.
Well, and then Alfred, he goes and kills himself right outside the chapel. You met him the first time. You find his body there.
Yeah, his duty fulfilled.
Well, he thinks he fulfills his duty. What he winds up doing is actually making everything worse.
It's kind of implied this entire time that Alfred wanted to be like Logarius so much that he chose his own martyrdom for that reason. Because even the first times you meet him, he seems like a nice guy, but he seems really fucking depressed. No lie.
Very obsessed, and
you complete your entire life's purpose within the span of a night, and then suddenly it's just like, well, what do I do afterwards? And if you're depressed beforehand and you're such like a religious zealot,
then your meaning is gone.
Yeah, you're done. Like, it's just like, well, why don't I end it? There's no rules against me not killing myself.
Honestly, there's not much reason to keep living in Yharnam. If you were smart, you'd get as far away from that place as you can.
Well, what seems to be the case throughout the entirety of Bloodborne is that there's this like cycle of death and rebirth, or at least stemming the tide. Mm-hmm. That seems to be the theme of most of these games.
History repeats itself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, so like even at the end of this game, when you defeat Murgo's wet nurse and you've essentially slayed a great one, you return, and then even if Gehrman like kills you and you wake up back in normal Yharnam, you've only pushed back another hunt for another day because the gods still demand it. Mm-hmm. That's essentially all this is.
And I think it's interesting that the great ones, they are all doing their own things.
Well, they're conspiring against each other all the time.
All the time. And I love that the moon presence, like essentially you're being manipulated by the moon presence for most of the game to just keep dying until you've done its bidding, and then he'll let you go.
Well, and the fact that they can even manipulate mortality like that is crazy, because you got to wonder if they're doing this on other planets, or there's a lot of questions that extend from this.
So let's leave Canehurst behind. We've kind of gone through some of that. Let's take our Tonsil Stone over to the chapel by the cathedral and get picked up by an amygdala and taken to a little integral spot, the lecture building, for the first time.
Great.
Which I didn't realize on my first playthrough that this was actually part of Byrgenwerth. The lecture building is a part of Byrgenwerth that has been transported into the Nightmare. And I guess it makes sense if that's like where the first like contact and Nightmare happened. Like that would be like kind of a portal through into the Nightmare zones.
From what I understand is that the Great Ones tend to work on consciousness, and their power extends from what they can manipulate through consciousness. And so creating like a a side universe is the easiest thing they can possibly fucking do. It's just like, well, if I don't like it existing in this physical space, I can create it in a mental space. The only difference between a dream and reality is that one you're asleep for.
And both are as valid as the other if you are in that plane at the moment. The more you kind of realize what the great ones are capable of, the more tenuous your grasp on everything kind of ultimately becomes.
Well, it's just like, what's the meaning in anything you do then?
I will say, though, you get to the lecture building, which isn't that interesting. You get to talk to Patches at one point, but...
Patches, is he a merchant in this one?
Eventually.
Does he sell you healing items? He sells you...
If you spare him at the end, he can show up in the Chalice dungeons.
Oh, great, whatever.
But yeah, I guess it's so rare that there's almost no proof that he can even show up in the Chalice dungeons.
Really?
Because it happens so infrequently.
Interesting.
The Nightmare Frontier I found to be incredibly not interesting as a location. The landscape's kind of boring.
It's basically like a lot of like yellowish stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My playthrough I just did for this last time was the first time I've done it before beating Rom. And I didn't realize that the bell ringers wouldn't show up if I did it before Rom, because they don't. Rom, when you defeat Rom, that veil is lifted. So it was much easier without the bell ringers. It's your first time being introduced to those Winter Lantern motherfuckers that they just see you and you die of frenzy, which is by far the worst implementation of frenzy in the game.
Well, unless you're talking about that giant brain in the middle of that.
The brain of Menses.
Yeah.
That whole concept of frenzy is broken. I wish Insight would have some more. It doesn't even have to be benefits, but that concept of just being seen by a certain enemy will destroy you immediately. I don't know.
So in Sekiro, there's a status called terror.
Yeah.
And if you succumb to terror, you bleed out half of your health, essentially.
Yeah. I guess it's actually kind of a powerful thing too, where if you have that much insight, it's like you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frenzy is a motherfucker.
Yeah. It's another one of those things where I'm like, I understand that you're creating it as like another obstacle, but sometimes I just want to play the fucking game.
I do like that concept though, where frenzy is where knowledge is being forced upon you and it drives you mad. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I really like that an enemy can just grab you and like, look at me.
Yep.
Yeah. Experience the horror of the world.
If they had taken it like another step further, I think I would be more on board. But the fact that it's just kind of like, it's a lot like, well, anything affects your health, right?
It's like a wonky gameplay mechanic.
Right. Now, if it started affecting like the way you move through the world or something, that, I don't know, that's a little more interesting game design wise.
I don't really care too much about anything in the Nightmare Frontier.
Yeah.
Even the boss Amygdala, the battle is not super interesting. It's cool that you're fighting it is a great one. It does bleed red, but it is just one aspect of like a multi-tiered great one. You get another chalice for Thumaru, but that was the Nightmare Frontier. Back in the Forbidden Woods, we're on the second part now after that ramshackle village. And now you're in just like Snake Land territory. Celestial emissaries are showing up.
I like this part of the woods.
Yeah.
I farmed a lot in this because it did have like the upgrade shards for your weapon.
It had some good stuff.
And heavy supply. And if you knew how to kind of work your way through it, if you had to farm, you could fucking farm. Mm-hmm. There are those Hydra ones though that spit all the acid at you, and
it's tough. You run into Walter, the Confederate.
League of Confederates.
Yeah. This guy's pretty cool.
It's rad. He's all about like assisting. He's all like, we'll come to your aid.
He showed up. The legend is a group of Confederates showed up to the village and they were all slaughtered by beasts, and he slayed the last beast and then he ate the motherfucker.
The Beast Eater.
They called him the Beast Eater. They called me the Queef Eater for a while, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yum yum yum. Well, I think the Forbidden Woods are fucking entrancing.
It is masterfully designed. I think the reason a lot of people hate it is because it's so difficult and it's so easy to be confused on location.
Once you get your claws into it, though, like it takes a little bit of learning. But once you get your claws into it, even though everything seems samey, it's literally just because of the brightness. Mm-hmm. You don't see a lot. It wants you to carry a torch.
I like that the vermin are introduced here too, and like Walter wasn't introduced until the DLC. Like he was patched in later.
Yeah.
And the concept of the vermin, it's something like you without the DLC would only see them in PvP. But eventually in the DLC you're able to start running into killing guys and finding vermin. Just in the nightmare, the hunter's nightmare. And some people theorize that the vermin are what caused the ashen blood. They found this disease that they were able to like, all right, just push the vermin into Old Yarnum. Yeah,
it's my theory too, because it's something extra in comparison, and it's something they can't control. So it's almost as if it's it's just a biological infestation of bugs that work upon the rules of the universe already. So it's like, how mosquitoes spread like Ebola and stuff like that. It's just another version of a bug that can do something to you. So it's just another form of the illness, which would explain like how some people are allergic to like vaccines. Even there's something actually there, and that's how I related it.
And this is manifested in the Shadows of Yarnum battle.
Yeah,
which you don't. The first time I play this, you don't realize the Shadows of Yarnum. You think that they're just like related to the city, but no. They are protectors of Queen Yarnum from Thumaru. These are Thumaran guards of sorts that have been verminized, and they are now being controlled by vermin, but they are still able to kind of guard where Queen Yarnum is.
How did you feel about this boss battle?
It wasn't, for some reason, it wasn't that difficult for me the first time.
For me, it was.
Well, I honestly think I must have gotten very lucky because it only took me 2 or 3 tries.
Yeah.
Because on my second playthrough, I'm like, fuck these guys. And on my third playthrough, once I was able to bring in one of the Medeiros twins, if you have another person to like distract 2 of them, you can really just take down the fire thrower.
Yeah, big problem.
Yeah, big problem. But it's essentially you're fighting like 3 very strong hunters who can transform into like vermin beasts partway through the battle.
Yep.
They're tough. I don't know. It's interesting that they show up at the very end of the game too.
I never look forward to them.
They always just seem like more of a nuisance than something I want to face.
Sure, yeah.
Because I'm always like, oh, Abridus, Amygdala. I know I'm kind of ready to fight them, but Shadows of Yarnum, like a bunch of janky hunters with a bunch of different mechanics that just kind of get you through numbers.
Unpredictable, because you have to pay attention to 3.
You got to kind of control where they place themselves.
Yep.
Byrgenwerth is fascinating.
I love the setting of Byrgenwerth beneath that giant moon shimmering lake.
Love it.
It's one of the most gorgeous locations. And then on the outside, you've got these fly creatures, which are the students.
The Garden of Eyes. What do they call them? Like, I don't know. They're all covered in eyes, though.
Well, the fact that they're flies means that they've got some of the best. Like flies have like multi-oculus eyes.
Very cool.
And so the idea that they chose to become these beings because of the amount of eyes that they have. I didn't even think about that until way later. I'm just like, oh, it's like the forest, where flies live.
It is interesting that if you're associated with a certain animal in your location, your geography, or if you're just affiliated with them, that's kind of where your beast generally kind of moves towards, because Ludwig is very horse-like when you fight him in the Hunter's Nightmare. And then you go into the fishing hamlet, and all of the Scourge of the Beast has made them into like fish monsters or like snail women.
I think the reason that Ludwig looks most like a horse is because, first of all, you've got this idea that when people are corrupt, they elongate, their faces elongate almost universally. Either to like wolves or
it's like a de-evolving process.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. But then like the fact that he became a horse, which makes him look fucking awesome, to be fair. I think it stems almost from a symbolic aspect where horses are seen as like noble creatures.
They're associated with nobility and honor.
Right. And the same thing with Amelia, the stag. The stag is known for its almost mystical association to nature or the forest.
Yeah.
So there's something really cool that's going on there. And then you see like Lawrence later, and it's basically the cleric beast, but it's on fire. And it's just like, well, there's the symbolism. It's all you need. He's like all of the other ones.
I love that it's manifested physically.
Yes.
Their transformation. Yeah, Byrgenwerth, this is the college where they discovered, they went underground, they found the old blood. They found the old blood of the gods, and they brought it up, and this is where they discovered blood healing for the church, the blood ministration.
Yep.
You had Willem, you had Lawrence, you had Mikolash,
And then you had Carol.
you had Gehrman and Maria. All of these people were working together.
Yep.
They all kind of split up at some point, but I believe like even Willem was working when they did go to the fishing hamlet with Kaz. I think a lot of that happened before the schism. Bergenworth, it's kind of a smaller location. You go around the outside, you get in the building, but you find this choir member in there named Yuri who's uses the strongest weapon in the game. I forget how it's pronounced. It's like a special like magic arcane weapon that just shoots like a million lasers at you. If it hits you, it's pretty much a one-shot kill.
I forget. I don't remember this one very well.
No worries. She's a dick. Willem has become kin. If you do, you find Willem looking at the lake. Emperor Palpatine.
He points his staff at the lake. Now, when you first played this, did you find this part confusing? Because I didn't know what to do. I'm like, for the most part, you're not going to jump in to the water.
No.
If
I hadn't seen that I was supposed to do it, I wouldn't have done it. I don't know. At this point, I'd already looked at a guide.
I spent a lot of time at Bergenworth just because of that. I probably spent way too long. Well, it's also because I didn't want to spend all my echoes and...
This is my first Souls game. If I were to go into a new one, I would be much more comfortable not looking into things. But I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm looking.
Sure.
I just need to keep things moving here. But I like that when you talk to Willem, he just goes, plus 2 insight.
He's just clone.
The dude's got so many eyes in his brain, he moans and you get insight.
He burps and suddenly it's just like, whoa, okay, I understand the universe now.
And yeah, he didn't imbibe in the old blood, but he did eventually figure out a way to get eyes on the inside of his head.
I think that's through meditation.
Yeah.
One of the things while we were talking, one of the things I thought about is that each of these original kind of members, they represent an idea of religion. With Willem, it is the internal insight. Mm-hmm. Then there's the brash physical nature from Lawrence. Then you have, through Mikolash, almost like this cult-like mentality. It was a cult. Because when you reach the end of Yahar Ghoul, he's literally surrounded, Jonestown style.
They drank the Kool-Aid.
They all wear the same fucking headgear, and they've all died the exact same way. They sacrifice themselves to ascend. Mm-hmm. And then what you have from Carol, who you never see, and that's on purpose, I think, is because he represents isolation. It's perfect.
What about the choir?
Well, the choir was a part of the church.
Yeah, the choir was like the choir and...
But that's also a physical aspect. That's the physical representation of your faith is usually the amount of people who believe in it, right?
I like that the choir, they are actually seeking to evolve. Like,
yes.
We need to evolve. And Mikolash is seeking to have audience. He's like, we just need to commune. But
he wants to achieve a goal, and he'll use as many people as he can.
He'll sacrifice
to achieve
them.
it, and he does.
Dude, he goes crazy and just starts kidnapping members of the choir, kidnapping hunters. Yeah. Like, we don't give a fuck. Like, we need them all now.
So they all represent an aspect of religion. Because Carol, he's the hermit. He's the one who you'll never see because he was so good at what he did, and he didn't care about being known. He's like, I'll inscribe this stuff, and just doing it is important.
Yeah. We jump in the lake, though. We fight Rom the Vacuous Spider.
Can you describe your fight with Rom?
Dude, it was intense because I killed Rom and the spiders killed me the same moment. And I'm like, what happens here?
I had it too.
Did it happen to you too?
Yeah.
Because there's so many of them.
It took me 3 tries to beat Rom because I didn't understand the hard carapace that it had on the outside.
Yeah, you got to get around it. I love that when you jump into the lake. That whole mysterious, ethereal, like the plane where you look into a reflection long enough, you can like see into another plane of reality.
It also has this really cool like warp in type of
it's so
like bubbles.
good. You jump into the lake and you're on the other side of it, the reflection. Yep. Yeah, Rom isn't not a great boss, and it seems like kind of a weaker old one. Kin
Miyazaki actually said that this was his favorite.
Yeah, which is pretty fun.
And I think it's because of the importance to the story. And maybe it's his wink, wink. I get to know about this. You guys don't because it was my idea. I think this is the one thing he kept for himself because Rom is not explained.
Well, we know that Rom is most likely an offspring of Ebrietas because Ebrietas is like mourning.
I think Rom was a person.
Well, I think that as well. I think it was an offspring of Ebrietas and a person, but you see Ebrietas mourning over what looks extremely like a corpse of Rom.
You're right.
But yeah, I think it was a person that has somehow achieved Great One-ish status, but in doing so, they've also become what I think is a Great One without a lot of power. It just flops around and summons spiders is all it can do.
Well, what's also interesting is that I heard it said on it might have been the Pale Blood Hunt, but it more resembles a caterpillar than any type of spider you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so the idea might be that this is super young and it has yet to like actually gestate and become the thing that it's meant to be. Because whenever you witness an infant Great One, you can't see it. It's just this, or it's just like this little wormy squid thing. And it would make sense that this is before it's like pupal stage.
Yeah, it's still very young.
Yeah.
So we have defeated Rom. We see Queen Yarnum, and then the Blood Moon descends. We will be right back. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get some more blood echoes.
It's time to tap in with the HyperX Quadcast S microphone. The stunning HyperX Quadcast S features dynamic, customizable RGB lighting, a convenient tap-to-mute sensor, and 4 selectable polar patterns, so it can broadcast crystal clear audio, whether you're gaming, streaming, podcasting, or impressing your remote colleagues and classmates. So what are you waiting for? Join the Quad Squad and tap in today with the HyperX Quadcast S microphone.
The Hardcore Gaming 101 podcast is on a mission to rank the top games of all time. I like the idea that when Bruce Wayne gets angry, he switches to the Batman voice.
Why do you have such a problem making Boomerang shaped like a bat? You mean like Batman? Not like Batman, just make it for me! Bruce Wayne, I can't even with this guy.
It's a Herculean task, and I'd be lying if I said it hasn't taken a toll on our cognitive faculties.
Most people would be happy to have a job during a global pandemic. Dennis!
Hardcore Gaming 101, twice a week, every week, right here on the HyperX Podcast Network.
Hello, my name's Jonathan Dunn, host of the O3C podcast. Every week I'm joined by my 2 best gaming buddies, Chris and Minty, and we talk about the games we're playing, the games we love, and how they rank alongside our sacrosanct top 100 favourite video games of all time lists. Deep dives into gaming mechanics, history and lore abound, all topped off with lashings of irreverent wry British wit, witterings and wisdom. For details on the show and more, head to o3c.games and tune in every Monday on the HyperX Podcast Network.
So after we defeat Rom, the veil has been lifted because Rom was able to, in a way, kind of stifle the Menses ritual.
Rom was a seal.
Because after you defeat Rom, the shit has hit the fan.
Look, the moon is a lot closer than you thought.
Yes, it is way closer. That is an amazing shot when the moon getting close to you.
Well, and that would also explain that Rom was also kind of like a stopgap measure to keep people placated.
Yeah.
Because most of the people you meet are like, why is this going on? If they had actually known that the moon was that
if you could actually see the amygdala on every fucking building, which you see after this.
Right. And so like the idea is that it was just a stopgap measure. Like, because it's like a kin. It's like a mindless being. It's called the vacuous spider.
Yeah.
Think about what that means. It's vacuous.
It's like a black hole.
And it lives in a space beyond anything that you can think of.
And between, in a way, too.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, kind of like a link between the two.
Absolutely, yeah.
A link to between worlds. So, yeah, there's a... Then you're taken to the Yahar Ghoul Unseen Village. This is a village for the School of Menses. So the Healing Church had the main factions. They had the School of Menses, and then they had the choir, and then the workshop, which is another separate part. But the School of Menses sought to find a way to commune with the Great Ones. And the choir sought to become Great Ones or elevate themselves to evolve.
Yep.
And these are the 2 areas we're going to be exploring before we get to the final area of the game. The Yahar Ghoul Unseen Village. We've seen part of it before with the Hypogean Jail. We're introduced to Bell Ringers, a new enemy type that rings a bell and can summon the dead back to life.
Oh my God.
which I love what it manifests in with the cramped caskets that are outside that area where before.
Yeah.
Instead of those boars, they just have like just a sea of corpses coming out of a casket, like attacking you.
Yeah.
It is horror as fuck.
Especially that area too. When you have the amygdalas on top of the church and it just constantly shoots the
lasers,
that laser beam.
That's a weird mechanic that only happens in one spot, but
yeah, which is weird. Why is that creature trying to keep you from there? Did they just need an environmental obstacle?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
We can find, I mean, there's not a ton of things that I really think we need to mention on the Unseen Village. Other than that, there is a choir member that we find that has been tied up, and that's where you get a key to the Upper Cathedral. It's tortured, and it's in a spot that you normally wouldn't look. It's another thing where if you're not scouring the landscape, if you didn't read a guide.
Exploration, too. Well, you can reach it if you're lucky, but you've got to comb over your environment.
Eventually, though, you're able to get to a part of the Unseen Village past where you were before, and you're able to find it's called the One Reborn, which is an interesting attempt at a great one. I love that it is 6 Thumerian bell ringers that are all just summoning all the bodies they can. They're trying to kind of manifest a grand falloon.
So this is literally a fight from Demon Souls.
Oh, really? To me, it was like a fight from Symphony of the Night with
So there's
Legion.
There's a boss called the Tower Knight.
Yeah.
In Demon Souls in the first area, and when you go in there, it's just this giant metal knight. He's huge. On each side, there are 4 archers.
Yeah.
And what you do is you run up and you defeat the archers first, and then you move back down and you face the Tower Knight. And the Tower Knight's weakness is his legs. So when you actually meet the Great One or the
One Reborn, is what they call
Reborn,
it. Yeah.
He has 1 billion legs, and it's implied that it's kind of a remember this, buddy, for anyone who's familiar with the series.
It is a visually striking sequence.
Gross as fuck. It's just a bunch of dead bodies that they found.
Bodies just dripping out of this like hole in the sky.
Yeah.
And I love that they're trying to resurrect a Great One just by summoning as many bodies as they can into
what's
coalesce
crazy,
into this being.
It's in front of a chapel where
it's in front of the school.
Yeah, where they're already dead.
Yeah.
Mikolash and all of his students are already dead.
It could be their bodies or like their physical presences being brought back.
Right, but I don't even think they care about living in the mortal realm. They only care about living in the nightmare.
I was confused my first playthrough because when it says the One Reborn, I thought this was like a final boss type thing because it sounds like the one.
It's very easy to kill.
I don't know. Maybe it's like a physical version of the brain of Menses because it's associated with the school.
Right.
I don't know. But
I think it's, from what I've read and from what I understand, they were building this to be a vessel for Murgo. Because Murgo, like Odin,
was formless.
Yeah.
Could be. That's a really good theory.
Yeah. I kind of like that one a lot, so it's my headcanon.
And after you beat the One Reborn, you're able to go in. But before we're going to go into that school, we're going to take that key up to the Upper Cathedral ward. We're finally able to get through that passage by the Healing Church Workshop out of the Erden Chapel. We didn't go up before. You're able to gain access to the orphanage, which a lot of...
kind of a misnomer, really.
Well, I mean, what a lot of people that are like lore divers theorize is that...
it's because there aren't a lot of caskets of babies on the streets.
They were like saying, we'll keep your kids safe if you let us take them to the Upper Cathedral ward, and then they're giving them the blood of Ebritus.
Yeah,
and that's why they're getting all celestial goopy headed.
I love thinking of them as like weird fungus orphans.
Yeah, I mean these were like the babies of Yharnam that were being force fed blood they didn't want.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I always related them to actually being like space aliens for a long time.
Me too. I thought they were actually from the cosmos. I thought this was another different like great one from way out there.
Shit, now they're bringing in sci-fi elements. I literally thought that for a while. If a UFO had shown up, but it kind of looked a little different, I would have been like, this fits.
Yeah,
but
I mean, a great one could be anything.
Yeah, exactly.
The orphanage is cool. I like the Lumen Flower Garden because it's the only place that, like, the Celestial Emissaries, it's very soothing for them to be around these flowers, which is why they're always drawn to, like, the garden and the orphanage.
Yeah.
The boss battle's incredibly weak, though, because there's just, like, one greater one that can hide as a smaller one.
Yeah, and you get lured into a false sense of security.
Yeah. I died once. I got it the second time.
You defeat that, and then you face Ebrietas.
Yeah, it is exciting to be able to see where the choir was working. There is no members of the choir here anymore because they've abandoned it, but it's cool to see this was their experiments, how we're going to evolve. We are going to take the blood and just be force feeding it into babies.
Yeah.
And after you defeat the Celestial Emissary, you're on like the upper level of the Grand Cathedral. You can see down where you fought before with Vicar Amelia. But then there's an elevator that takes you way below the Grand Cathedral, which I love how far that elevator goes down.
You have to wait a bit, yeah.
And this is where Ebrietas is, which the Healing Church found a chalice that allowed them to have audience with Ebrietas. This is after they split, so this is one that they found themselves after splitting with Bergenworth.
Right.
And Ebrietas is called the Daughter of the Cosmos.
Or she's also the abandoned one.
Yep. She will not attack you at first until you attack her because she's mourning over what a lot of people just say. It definitely is Rom.
Or Rom types.
Something
made to be like Rom.
There can be multiple versions of different things too in this world, but Ebrietas is a cool boss fight. I didn't have too much issue with it the first time. I had more issues today, actually.
Ebrietas has a lot of shockwave attacks from what I recall. Where it's radial and it kind of moves all around her.
Eventually, I mean, all of the bosses near the end of the game, a lot of them, you hug the back butt on either side and attack a bunch.
Hopefully, yeah.
Throw a bolt paper or a fire paper on, and you'll probably get through it.
Yeah.
Summon someone in if you want an even easier version of the fight. I do think it is a very striking design where there's like it looks like a human or something, or a Thumaran that over a long time did become a great one. But because there's a lot of human aspects, but the head is like split open with like two eyes on both sides of the open mouth. I like
that one a lot.
The more you look, the more human it appears.
Yeah.
Which is very peculiar.
The design work in this game is so next level. I don't understand.
I can't comprehend how they do it.
Well, this doesn't even feel like a Japanese produced title.
No, it feels very Western. It feels very modern.
Well, recently it brings to mind the modern H.P. Lovecraft is a manga artist called Junji Ito.
Okay.
If you get the opportunity, I'll actually lend it to you the next time I see you. It's a book called Spiral.
Please do.
It is fucking phenomenal. And it is so Bloodborne. You're just going to be like, oh.
You know, there's Bloodborne graphic novels too?
I read them all.
Do you have them?
I don't own them, no.
I'm going to have to find them. I really want to read them.
They're pretty easy to find. On Amazon, there's always a deal on them.
There's also like a board game or a card game. I'm just like craving so much Bloodborne stuff right now.
I
want to plush.
The graphic novel is pretty good.
Yeah.
You're just a different hunter. It's kind of rad. Yeah.
So we only really have one more location in the main game.
Sure.
So after we defeated the One Reborn, you're able to go in Yahar Ghoul, Unseen Village, to not the lecture hall, but like where the School of Menses is, and there's just lines of dead bodies, and they all have those cage helmet masks that are so striking. And I just love the philosophy behind them too.
It's so symbolic too.
It's an antenna. You're reaching up to the sky. You're also like preventing a lot of things from entering in to like your periphery.
Your head is a sacred space. Protect it by imprisoning it.
It's very cool and philosophical, but also it'd be fucking stupid to wear.
Yeah. I think it looks dumb.
But if you go forward and you like reach out to Mikolash's body, which is clearly like he's deceased. That body is done.
Oh.
It takes you to the second level of the lecture building. Nothing interesting there. You're on another level of the lecture floor. You can talk to Patches. You sneak up behind him, spare him, whatever you want to do. But you are taken to the Nightmare of Menses, which one look at this place, giant looming glowing tower in the background. I knew like, okay, This is the final area of the game.
I didn't think it the first time I got there.
Oh, you didn't?
Because I don't know. I guess I had expectations.
Yeah.
That weren't quite met at this point. I was like, oh, we're just in a different place now. Okay, cool. And then we'll go back to like Yarnum and you'll face something in Yarnum. I legitimately thought that.
You do face something else after this stage, kind of, if you want to. But yeah, so the Nightmare of Menses. I love these fuckers. They're crazy. They're cultish. Their first experiments, they were just putting mirrors everywhere, and they were trying to figure out a way to be able to commune with the Great Ones through mirrors.
Yeah.
And there's something there that is a part of like humanity that's been around. That's like an aspect in a lot of
self-awareness.
And it's effusive. It's in a lot of different like human religions, but in the battle with Mikolash later, he runs into mirrors. So I don't know if that's an aspect of him affecting the nightmare or it actually being something that really was functioning.
I think that's his harnessing of the arcane and kind of being an illusionist because most cult leaders, I always relate him to a cult leader. Like what I said before, a lot of what cult leaders do is they use smoke and mirrors. They give you a lot of, I don't know, they turn water into wine, but they're just slipping it in between their sleeves and pulling out shit. It's just like
David Blaine, Chris Angel.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, it's like street magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage, the Mind Freak.
Nicolas Cage, the Mind Freak. Very good.
Yeah. Some people have theorized that the Nightmare of Menses is kind of like a Lauren location too, because it features Silver Beast and Queen Yarnum at the very top. This could be where she originally was when she was impregnated before she had the baby. I like that theory, and Mikolash has kind of just inhabited the location. He sacrificed literally all of his followers to get here, to have an opportunity to commune with the Great One. They sought, I think they were seeking to commune with Erden, but they wound up speaking with Murgo. Whatever happened, it was, because Murgo was stillborn, and communing with Murgo resulted in the stillborn brain. Like, they were all stillborn in the nightmare.
Yeah.
These poor fuckers, maybe like reaching for this power isn't the smartest thing to do.
Well, one of the things in the lore too is that all Great Ones have stillborn children, and then they search for surrogates.
It's fascinating that is like a part of the lore. All Great Ones have like lose their children
unless they themselves are dead. One has to live and one has to die, because then you think about the Orphan of Kos.
Emperor Palpatine,
sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the Orphan of Kos, yes.
Well, literally an orphan. It wasn't stillborn, but Kos had to be dead in order for the Orphan of Kos to be born and be alive.
And I've also heard that if you kill the offspring, the mother or the parent is so linked with them, it kills both of them, because you kill Ariana's offspring, she dies as well. And I don't know that's not a one-to-one good comparison, but it's definitely like a link that happens.
It's interesting.
Trying to understand the nature of the Great Ones is just beyond our small brains, though, too, right?
Oh my God.
Our cat is sitting at the table like, you guys don't get it, you stupid shits.
Martin's looking at me like, dude, are you as high as I am?
Nightmare of Menses is a fucking awesome location.
It's cool. It's got these great purple hues everywhere.
I love the castle design, the way it all interacts with each other.
Yep, with the cages that move up. Like
I love those little cage elevators. I don't like how much frenzy you receive from that brain of Menses and then from the wandering lanterns.
I just like when you cut it down.
Yeah, oh, that's great. And then
that part feels satisfying.
It's not easy to get to that point, but you drop it down and you go back and you take that cage elevator, the furthest one that you've ever done, all the way down there. You make contact with this crazy brain of eyes for like 2 minutes, and it gives you a rune.
Yep.
Because it gives you something. It must at that point just be like, yeah.
Well, this feels like, obviously for these things, you need guides.
I think it's fascinating that before a guide came out, that was found, though, because those lore divers, they get the make contact rune, and they were like going up to everything and making contact forever. Yeah. And eventually it works. They're like, fuck yeah. There's someone who's taken that little like music box and used it on every bad guy.
Just to figure it out.
There is a lot of wonderful lore to Bloodborne, and sadly, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Well, it's a lot of questioning, and I think that's on purpose. And I think it's supposed to get you to think. Whereas in Dark Souls, you can literally just make one-to-one comparisons.
Yeah.
In Bloodborne, it's kind of like, ooh, but is it?
What do you think of the Nicolas Cage boss fight?
I liked it. I found it to be pretty entertaining. I found it to be like an annoying fight.
But not difficult, right?
No, not at all. And I don't know if it was meant to be.
Yeah.
If you're not managing your mobs correctly and you're just moving right towards him in the fight, yeah, you're doing it wrong. I really love when he shoots tentacles out at you.
The Augur of Abritus.
Yeah, I used that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that weapon. It's so good.
Because you're actually like opening a portal. That's actually Abritus reaching through a portal and slapping someone.
I fucking love that shit.
And it's funny that it still works even after you kill Abritus.
Yeah.
But that's the way those planes work with those great ones.
Time means nothing in the hunter's dream.
I love that From Software made the choice that they're going to make this boss battle. It's not necessarily super difficult, but it's kind of annoying and it's much different in its approach.
Right.
That sequence where Mikolash first sees you and he like looks over through the cage, he like laughs at you.
He's got no eyebrows.
Dude, it's so good. I was playing it earlier today and Carly like was on her phone and she just stopped and she started looking at the screen like, what the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
Cos. Or some say Cosm. Do you hear our prayers? No, we shall not abandon the dream. No one can catch us. No one can stop us now. Please.
He is spooky and crazy in the perfect way. I loved Mikolash as a character. He's one of my favorites, probably. His design is very striking.
He's the Charlie Manson of this game.
Yeah, I think Charlie Manson had a little. I don't know.
Don't give Charlie Manson credit.
No, I'm not trying to give him credit. I think he had like a different approach, but
sure.
Mikolash.
We're thinking Prison Charlie.
It's great when you kill him
with a big swastika on his head.
Well, Mikolash, he's mostly concerned with when you kill him. He's like, I'm gonna forget everything that I learned in the nightmare.
I'll just go back to the real world.
Well, he's mostly afraid like I'm gonna forget what I learned here in the nightmare. He's still just chasing the dragon.
I don't think he understands that he doesn't have a body to go back to.
Poor Mikolash.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares about him?
Yeah.
Like literally, like he caused most of this problem by summoning Murgo.
And before we go up to see Murgo, one of my favorite characters in the game that doesn't have any information on him really is Choir Intelligencer Edgar, this random hunter on a bridge who's dressed as a choir member, and that's what he's called, is Choir Intelligencer Edgar.
Well, you just know he worked for Mikolash.
No, he didn't. No, really? He's a member of the choir that was investigating the school of Menses. Oh. He gets stuck in the nightmare, and he's like, oh, shit. He's on the most intense mission of his life. When
you fucking murder the shit out of him.
I wish we could have had a conversation with him, but there'd be a really cool graphic novel about Edgar getting in way over his head.
I don't know. I think it would just be sad. It would just be like, fuck. I had a wife and kids.
I could have gone to Paris.
Yeah, exactly.
Why'd I choose Yarnum for school?
Gosh darn it.
Murgo's Wet Nurse, it could be, theoretically, the final boss of the game. You get to the top of the Nightmare of Menses. Yeah. You see Queen Yarnum mourning outside. You can't talk to her.
With her big old bloody belly.
Something that I found endlessly fascinating today when I got there. The last treasure chest outside of the boss battle, you open it and it's got Yosefka's blood vial.
Ooh.
Yosefka's blood is sitting up there at the top. So Yosefka was up to something else.
Well, she was part of the healing church.
She's part of the healing church. Why is her blood all the way at the top? Who was imposter Yosefka? And there's Miyazaki just sitting there laughing like, it's so good, right?
I don't even know if he has an answer because most of the time it's like the end of fucking Inception. Who cares sometimes?
The end of Inception has a meaning though. I think the mystery is kind of what Miyazaki was going for. It's great.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I doubt he has the answer because I don't think that even Chris Nolan understands what happened at the end of.
I think the end of Inception. The point was that Leonardo DiCaprio's character doesn't need to look at the totem anymore. Well, yeah, the point is that he has accepted reality.
Growth. Yeah.
And it's not whether or not it falls, it's that he has accepted.
Yeah. Murgo's wet nurse is basically the Grim Reaper with a bunch of hands and swords.
No physical presence, though. I wouldn't even say it has hands.
It's ghostly form, and I don't think it's Odin. I don't think for a millisecond. Odin is literally, he is the present. He's like the Holy Ghost. He's not something that takes physical form.
Well, and that's why I think a lot of people want to say it is, because it is formless. There's no physical form. It's just like a cloak on top of it.
But think of what the boss is called. Murgo's wet nurse. What is a wet nurse?
It's who takes care of the baby for the mom.
So all great ones are always orphaned, or all children of great ones are always stillborn, right?
Not always stillborn, but they always die. And they seek a surrogate.
So
it must be hard to mate when you're just a bunch of amygdalas, you know?
So maybe Odin abandoned Murgo, but also had something tasked with taking care of him so that the rules didn't apply. But you think of a wet nurse, you think of something that takes care of something to some degree. And for humans, wet nurses are often people who like make sure the baby is well nursed or taken care of. Oftentimes, wet nurses way back in the day were women who never stopped lactating or producing like life-giving essence.
It's more important what it represents on like a very grand mythical scale, like on a Joseph Campbell scale. Like how does this represent like the virgin birth, the hero's tale?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what he's going for. And I think in a lot of these like more grand concepts.
Yeah.
And so this was, my God, Queen Yarnum was a Thumarin from forever ago that had a virgin birth. That was, the birth went very wrong because it was with the formless Erdin. And we've heard this baby crying. Maybe it's because the baby wasn't able to have a physical form. Maybe it's because Queen Yarnum died and her being is torn between realms everywhere.
Well, you know the rule that, especially in primates, when a child is born, the child tends to look more like the father rather than the mother, because the idea is that back in when we were less evolved, if it didn't look like the dad might even like disregard it or destroy it.
Yeah.
And I think this is related to that, because even as an infant great one, why wouldn't Murgo represent the father?
If my kid said he didn't like Donkey Kong Country, I wouldn't be interested in him.
What if he said, I think Donkey Kong Country 1 is overrated, but I think 2 is pretty good?
I'd be like, dude, you get it, bud. I'm paying for your college, my dude.
Hell yeah, you had to do it anyway.
And I'm going to go ahead and say 3 is underrated.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's fine. Tropical Freeze returns.
Tropical Freeze is the best.
Yes, absolutely.
Although 2 is up there. 2 is up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the baby that's been crying throughout the whole game. This is kind of what's been causing the whole hunt. And to an extent, I believe the moon presence, we've been summoned to the hunter's dream to defeat the wet nurse, because
that's literally the purpose.
As soon as you defeat the wet nurse, the next time you go to hunter's dream, the
Gehrman
building
offers to kill you.
Well, the building's on fire. Like your dream's on fire. And the doll's like,
Good hunter, you have come. Dawn will soon break. This night and this dream will end. Gehrman awaits you at the foot of the great tree.
The boss wants to see you in the office over there. If you can go say hi to him.
Good hunter, you've done well. The night is near its end. Now, I will show you mercy. You will die, forget the dream, and awake under the morning sun. You will be freed from this terrible hunter's dream.
He's like, well, you have a choice now. I'm going to kill you. You get to wake up in the dawn. Or
he says it more like, oh, great, you did a good job. Your dream's over. Let me finish this for you. And you can resist. And apart from maybe Gascoigne and Ligarius, Gehrman was very tough for me.
Well, he has that Quicksilver. He has the Quicksilver technique.
Yeah,
he's the fastest hunter.
He is very fast, and he can like disappear so quick.
Yeah,
I struggled for a while until someone said, just spam your bullets at him. Just until he's staggered, just keep shooting. It doesn't matter if he's close, just keep shooting.
Yep.
Eventually you stagger him enough to get a few good hits in there.
I was able to parry him twice.
Yeah.
In my first battle with him. I got him the first time.
Nice.
I got lucky. That's literally it, because I've heard people banging their heads against walls with this one.
Oh, yeah. And that was me. There's 3 possible endings, so you can submit to him, and if you let him kill you, you wake up in a Yarman on a sunrise, and everything looks really nice. Yeah. And what's your thought on that? Is that you actually wake up in the real Yarnum and things going to be okay?
So
is it like you forget all of your knowledge of the great ones?
I don't think you forget anything. I think you become like Jura, or you become like Eileen. But I think it's literally, but with the purpose fulfilled of your hunt, for them, their purpose was doing what they were doing anyway.
Yeah.
Your purpose was specific. And so once you achieved it, you get the gift of peace.
But I mean, you get the gift of peace, but is Yarnum saved?
No. Nothing's safe.
By defeating the ritual of Menses, Mergo's wet nurse, like that whole situation, does it...
So literally... Everything in this game is old ones conspiring against each other, right? Mm-hmm. We can kind of agree that.
Yeah.
The Moon Presence wanted you to kill Mergo's wet nurse so that Mergo would have no one to take care of it. Can't take care of it.
Yeah.
And even the Queen Yarnum, she bows to you after you leave. After defeating Mergo's wet nurse,
and
like you ended something out of mercy,
and Erden has already moved forward, and he's already impregnating Ariana and he's already planning his next baby.
He also doesn't have to think about that shit. But something like the Moon Presence, which I believe represents your Pale Blood Hunt, to me, the Pale Blood Hunt is you going to this place in search of pure blood. No influence from higher beings. You get to choose what you do. Mm-hmm. So the purest form of blood might actually be becoming one of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the pale blood is. If you had to ask me, because when you think of pale, you think of white. You think of like ghastly, but you also think of pale as clean. Mm-hmm. And I think it just means clean blood when you really break down what it's supposed to be. I've always thought of it as like the Moon Presence comes down, the moon is pale.
If the Moon Presence represents your hunt, then I think ultimately you are being rewarded in becoming a great one and transcending the hunt by understanding. If you understand more of the lore of the game and you take the time, it's like a meta.
It's metatextual.
It's metatextual where if you're like, willing to put the time in and comprehend the grander universe, you can become a greater being than when you started the game.
Yeah. Literally and figuratively.
That is a fantastic read on the game. I really like that.
You don't know your character's motivations besides the fact that you, the player, just wants to get to the end, which basically means just destroying everything in your path. What your character actually wants is something that is ill-defined. Your character never speaks. How would you know what your character wants?
He does. You have the option to say a couple things barely. Like when the crazy old lady's like, how are you doing? Like, I have my share of woes, or say nothing.
But everything is done for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you're talking in terms of video games, it's the same. It's the same thing.
Your character is defined by the choices you make.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even though they're not spelled out to you and everyone is essentially experiencing the same thing.
You don't need a Paragon Renegade system. You can just make decisions and then deal with them. I love that it's not like, we have a complex system in place. Like, no. Did you kill him? Did you spare him?
But what separates this is that if you didn't search hard enough and you didn't understand what was going on, then you didn't achieve your goal to begin with.
It is so fucking good. You can also, after you beat Gehrman, if you haven't eaten your umbilical cords for breakfast, if you haven't eaten them, the Moon Presence descends, and then you become the new master of the hunt.
Did you have trouble with the Moon Presence?
I only died the first time because I was so weak after defeating Gehrman.
It's not that difficult. You just have to be careful about how many blood vials you used.
Yeah, I wound up only dying the first time, but you don't have to fight Gehrman again, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's the bonus. Yeah.
But if you haven't eaten your umbilical cords, you become the new host of the hunt. you are missing a foot and the doll is pushing you around, and you're going to just be like, hey, what's up, dog? Dude, the moon presence is Will. I'm stuck here. Yep. There's some really great optional dialogue for Gehrman that it's super rare, but you can hear Gehrman like calling out like,
oh, Lawrence, Master Willem, somebody help me, unshackle me, please, anybody. I've had enough of this dream. The night blocks all sight. Oh, somebody, please.
It's so good. And there's a time you can hear the doll like reading a poem to a grave too, which is really great.
It makes you wonder.
But if you have taken all of your umbilical cords, you've eaten your proteins, you are able to resist the moon presence, defeat the Great One, and then you become a Great One.
Yes.
And I love
your little squid Billy.
It's in the achievement, actually, that kind of describes what happens.
Yeah.
Where it's like, humanity has moved on to its new childhood or whatever.
You're the first one to ascend. To actually ascend.
And you have ascended, and you are a human who has become a Great One.
Yep.
Which is what all the characters were trying to do and striving to do and doing a terrible job and ruining their lives and everyone else's lives, but you have managed to do it in spite of everything.
Because you just did it the right way. Well, I think it's all really interesting. A lot of people are asking for like a Bloodborne 2. I don't
think it's necessary, but I also would be very happy to have it.
I think you could, like the way they did Sekiro. I'm going to be honest with you. Sekiro is the logical forward motion from Bloodborne. I don't think a lot of people would agree with me on that, but I'm sorry, like it's like Bloodborne times 2, not in terms of like quality, but the action of it.
But as far as the mythos and
well, actually,
there's a Lovecraftian nature to Sekiro.
You would be surprised.
Is it like more Eastern religion?
It's really just Eastern religion stuff, but the way they incorporate that mythology is actually fantastically beautiful.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, if Vati Vidya can make a bunch of videos about it, you've got a good story to begin with.
If you're listening, Vati Vidya, which you might be, I wish you had made so many more Bloodborne videos. I watched all of them, and you made a shitload.
You didn't make nearly enough.
I would have watched every video you made, and
I watched through all of them today.
They're all so good. And all of you other Bloodborne creators, I don't have all of your names on hand, but I listen to, check out Bonfireside Chat. They're fantastic. Mm-hmm. And there's so many great YouTube lore divers. I've watched all of your videos, guys. I forget your names, but you're all great. Who sent the summons to Canehurst? What is the doll? And will we ever find out if Maria and Gehrman boned? They probably did.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
There's just a deep reverence and love and respect, but no boning.
I think it's a father-daughter relationship.
Well, we didn't talk about the Bloody Crow of Canehurst. We didn't talk about Henrik to an extent.
Good God.
But there are the Old Hunters DLC. I am halfway through it as I am talking right now.
We will be coming back to Souls and its theme at another point.
If you are a Patreon subscriber, that means the next episode will be a discussion of the Nier series of games.
Ooh, I'm playing through it right now.
And if you're not a Patreon subscriber, it's so far away, I'm not sure what it is. You should consider, if you want to subscribe on Patreon, it would mean a whole bunch to us, and we would appreciate if you've listened this far. It might be worth $3, I think. Big special thanks to our Patreon producers, Mark Nino, Tyler Keller, and Brian Ward. You are the executive producers of this episode. And to every one of our other Patreon supporters, thank you so much. Dylan, where can they find us?
They can find us on patreon.com. We've got a bunch of tiers, even starting at the $1 range, which is like our little tip jar. But in order to get our content like this, you're probably already on this. You at least subscribe to $3. We're also on Facebook at God, I'm not on it. Don't worry. It's Hair of the Dogcast. Then we're at Hair of the Dogcast. Are we Hair of the Dogcast Pod on
Instagram, on Twitter? We are at Hot Dogcast.
Okay.
I can't thank you enough, Dylan, because if it wasn't for you, I would never have played Bloodborne, which is in my top 5 games of all time.
You'll be thanking me when we talk about Nier too, because I introduced that shit to you as well.
I love Nier Automata. I a huge fan of Nier, but Bloodborne is like more my sweet spot.
Gonna be honest.
I think Nier's philosophies maybe I don't know. They're both up there. They're both such elevated pieces of video game art.
Those are my favorite games, bar none, of the past 5 years.
Yeah. We love y'all so much. Worship the old ones. Talk to you, the Cats of Ulthar, Call Cthulhu, whatever it is you do. Watch Lovecraft Country. Mostly, keep playing games. And thanks for listening to us. We do appreciate all of you wonderful listeners. Leave us a review and like and subscribe if you have time to whatever social medias you like. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk with you.
Yeah. And if you donate, you get to choose our topics.
You can make us do any video game topic.
Dude, Sonic Archie, come on, just let it happen.
It wouldn't talk too much.
I want to torture Brad. I would run that episode, and my goal would be to try to drive you insane. I
would be in. Dude, I'd be in. If I was told by Patreon people, like, you need to understand Archie comic Sonic, I'm like, Sally Acorn, let's go.
She's like the Princess Leia of...
a little more sass to her. Yeah. I don't know. Rogue is Rouge.
Thank you.
Go listen to the second episode if you want to hear more on Rouge. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Grant us eyes. Grant us eyes. Plant eyes on our brains to cleanse our beastly idiocy. Nightmare swirls and churns unending.
Sponsored by HyperX, the maker of the acclaimed Quadcast and Quadcast S microphones. Quadcast USB mics look and sound amazing, and they're packed with features. With 4 selectable polar patterns, you'll get great sound no matter what you're recording. The included shock mount and pop filter mean you won't have to shell out extra cash for a great setup.
Appreciate that.
Then there's the eye-catching LED indicator and tap-to-mute sensor, so you can tap in and tap out to stop broadcast accidents. It's time for you to tap in with the HyperX Quadcast and Quadcast S.